Sabrina again. Today we will be reading. It's an article that I found. It's 10 true scary stories that will send shivers down your spine. Now, I don't know. It does say it's the winners of an annual real life scary story contest and that they won. It was for Halloween. But now, let's be the judge of that, shall we? First story. The Dog Door by Megan. Shortly after my son was born, my then husband and I bought a 100-year-old house for our expanding family, which included the three of us and our medium-large dog. As someone who grew up afraid of the dark after a strange accident with a neighbor boy looking in my window as a child, I repeatedly had to tell myself that the creaks and thumps and the sounds were normal for a house of that age. With old growth trees that bumped the roof and scraped the windows at night, and nosy radiant heat, and a back gate that wouldn't stay shut and clanged in the wind. I'd hear sometimes, and instead of investigating, I'd hide under the covers like a reasonable adult. When my then husband and I split up, I kept the creaky house and he kept the medium-large dog. When my son was still small, the two of us were watching a movie in the front room. Around dusk, when my phone died, as a type B personality, the one charger I had was typically strewn somewhere about the house. This time I found it in the kitchen, but as I crossed to the counter to plug it in, I had the overwhelming goosebumpy, tingly, sinking sense that something was very, very wrong. I turned and realized that not only was the back gate open again, someone was sitting cross-legged in the yard, seemingly staring at the house. They had a hood and a dark sunglasses, despite the fleeting light, and didn't move, even when I stepped closer to the window. To make sure I wasn't hallucinating, they remained eerily motionless. When I was certain they couldn't see me, and still even when I was pretty sure they could see that I'd seen them, I quickly locked the back door, grabbed my phone and my charger, and headed into the dining room to my laptop, where I sent the first person I could see online a message that someone was sitting in my yard staring at my house, and that my phone was dead, and to please call the police if they didn't hear from me in a few minutes. I assumed, however, what was in the yard would leave one-sided, but nevertheless waited on tender hooks, impatiently staring at my still useless phone. After an awkward conversation with my son about why we weren't going to the kitchen to get a glass of water, it finally lit up and I was able to call 911. I tried to calmly explain to the dispatcher that I was sure the person was gone, but begged that they please send an officer to check my yard, as the motionless staring and unsettling at best. Keeping me on the phone, she asked if I could look out a window without being seen to verify, as well as check the locked door. I awkwardly crept as stealthily as I could toward the kitchen, slowly realizing that while the back door was locked, it also had a very clearly too large dog door with no functioning way to block it. Panicking, I stood slightly in an attempt to scan the yard, and came face to face with a hood and sunglasses staring down at me through the window. At this point, I was incoherent as the dispatcher urged me to grab my son, hightail, and in a locked room, I dart back to him and explain we need to go now. And as I pick him up, I hear the clear and unmistakable sound of the dog door slowly swinging open. I abandoned the house, leaving the front door wide open and dashed across the street to pound on my neighbor's door. Once inside, they kindly paused their dinner party to distract my son, while I stared across the street and messily sobbed about our very indoor cat we left behind. Poor cat. Not long after the officers arrived, they came through the side gate with a hood and sunglasses in town. They apprehended her calmly sitting on my back step, her arm lazily, purposefully swinging in and out of the dog door. I boarded the dog door shut that night, but we moved shortly thereafter, as I never quite sure after that if all the nighttime knocks and bumps and open gates I'd been hearing were actually just the old house. Well, it changes from the other video where there were little stories. But not gonna lie, I would be paranoid as well. If I was her, I would even shut one eye at night just to sleep. I would have been too scared, really. So I'm gonna read another one. Let's see what this is about. The title goes, "Please Just Go" by Clouded Dancing Texan. Okay, I'm really bad. My cousin was shot and killed in the late 90s. He was very young, only 21, a victim of mistaken identity, and he and I got along well, and I loved him, of course, but we weren't particularly close. So when I started dreaming of him constantly, I was unnerving and very draining. Years passed, I got married, had a son, moved a couple of times, but I'd still have very lucid dreams of him. It was exhausting. One afternoon, I fell asleep on the couch in our living room while my son played quietly on the floor. My husband had night school, so he didn't get home until 9 or so. So it was just our son and I that were home. At some point, I realized my son had stopped playing. We just stared at each other. There was a strange sort of tension in the air. While I napped, I had one of those very lucid dreams. As I was napping on the couch, but knew he was approaching our house. I knew in the dream that he was dead. The knowledge filled me with a paralyzing feeling of dread. I couldn't move as I was very afraid. As he walked our driveway, I could see his shadow walking past the front windows. Saw his silhouette through the frosted glass of our front door. In my dream, my son, only a toddler, saw him, and he stood up and began to approach the door. Sorry for the inconvenience, my phone died. But so I was saying, approached the door. I couldn't call out to him, warn him away. My son babbled, and my cousin cocked his head at the sound. Somehow I was able to move and envelope my son in my arms and silently pleaded with my cousin, "I'm so sorry, Stephen, but please, I can't, please go, please go, just go." I saw his shoulders slump and he turned away. I felt terrible, but the fear would not let up. I peeked through the window beside the front door and saw him walking away, turning the corner by our garage. And then I startled awake. I looked around outside through the window. All was normal. My son was still playing on the floor. Everything was okay. I picked up a book I'd been reading to take my mind off my disturbing dream. At some point, I set it down and realized my son had also stopped playing. We just stared at each other. There was a strange sort of tense. Sorry again, I don't know what is happening with my phone. But as I was saying, again, tension in the air. A ringing in my ears. Suddenly, there was a loud crashing sound. Our glass screen door had shattered. Why is the cousin trying to take the son? It's just... Why would you do that? It's your nephew. Like, come on. I'm trying to find another story. Like, one last story. I feel like they really are kind of long. Oh my god. They're so long. You know what? I'm gonna read this one. It's gonna be a last one. The Night Terrors by Chaotic Insomniac. Many years ago, our son went through an extreme night terror phase that gradually morphed to including sleepwalking. He was only 3 at the time and not very articulate yet. He didn't seem to remember the night terrors and wasn't afraid of being alone in his room or even going to bed on his own. Thither he will go without any prompting, and he would go check on him and see his little sneakers neatly placed beside his bed and him curled up under the covers in his PJs. We found that having him sleep in bed with us prevented these episodes altogether. Sorry. So for weeks we did just that. It was a bit of a squash, but definitely beat the alternative. But shortly after we resorted to this fix was when the sleepwalking began. One night I felt him clamber over me, and groggling, I assumed he had to go to the bathroom, and almost instantly fell back to sleep. I awoke to his terrified screams, disoriented about where he was. My husband found him shaking uncontrollably next to his bed, eyes dilated and blank with horror. We carried him back to our bed, holding him close, and waited for him to fall back asleep. This continued to happen off and on for weeks before my mom bought a lady who was a self-proclaimed curandera, or a witch doctor, to our home, and I had her cleanse it. She said our house had a lot of negative energy from previous tenants and restless spirits of small children who had become attached to our son. This was all horrifying to hear. We had experienced odd things, but none more disconcerting than our son's night terrors. The night terror stopped after her cleansing, but other activity kicked up, and we continued to have our son sleep in our room, terrified that he'd have another episode. Some of the other experiences were knocks within the walls, doors opening on their own, pictures flying off the wall, doors slamming shut as you approached them, though no one was on the other side to have been able to slam them. We won't once experienced seeing the shadow of a person, a man walking around the house, but when we peeked outside, there was no one there. The last straw was when the both of us had the same nightmare, woke drenched in sweat and seeking comfort from the horrifying dream, only to tell it and realize we'd been dreaming nearly the same thing. In the dream, we were across the street talking to our neighbors when they pointed out that our house was on fire. We looked back and saw that the house was enveloped in black smoke. We could see our son banging his fist helplessly against the front bay window. Panicked, we rushed across the street and into the house searching for him. In my dream, I found him and held him tightly to me as I ran back outside to safety, only to realize the bundle I held in my arms was his baby blanket and not him. I stared back at the house in time to see it collapse in a fury of flames and woke up screaming. My husband dreamt he went into the house and could hear my son crying out for him and couldn't find him. Then we heard a soft daddy and reached down and grabbed him up and ran outside as he realized that our son felt very light in his arms, and when we looked down he saw he was only holding a teddy bear. Needless to say, this rattled us even more. We promptly moved out, staying in my parents' small guest room until we could sell the house. It wasn't on the market long, and wanting to be upfront about our experiences, we told the buyers against our realtor's advice. He was a much older man who planned to use it as a rental property, and waved off our experiences as nervous nonsense. What? If I was a realtor and somebody would told me these weird experiences, I wouldn't say nervous. What the fuck? I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. Like, imagine just being at your job, people who lived in it and have a son and actually have those experiences. It's just, and saying just nervous nonsense. It's just, don't be a realtor then. Literally, your job is to say the history about the house, and you're not doing that. Like, what? But anyway, this was the stories. They were really long. Really, I get it, they were really nominated for good true stories. I don't know if they're actually true or just a title to just catch on the documentary, but if they're true, if I was those people, I would have just moved from Earth, actually. So I hope y'all like this video, and say by your own judgment in the comments. Like and subscribe to show your support so I know if y'all like this and maybe see future videos made by me. Thank you, hope y'all enjoy this. I'm saying it again, and have a wonderful week.